The gate agent's voice crackled through the speaker, calling final boarding for Flight 227 to Cancun. And that's when Danielle turned to her husband and said the words that would end everything. "You're killing everyone's mood, Marcus. Just go home." She said it loud. Loud enough for the family behind them to stop talking. Loud enough for the airline worker at the desk to glance up. Loud enough for their own children to freeze mid-step, backpacks half on their shoulders, eyes darting between their parents. Marcus stood there for a second. Just 1 second. He looked at his wife's face. Not angry, not embarrassed for herself, just tired of him. Like he was luggage she'd been dragging through the terminal. He didn't yell. He didn't ask her to repeat herself. He didn't even ask why. He said, "Okay," and he turned around and walked away. If this story has already got your heart racing, hit that like button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because this channel is about to become your new obsession. Behind him, he heard his daughter Maya's voice crack. "Dad." He didn't turn around. If he turned around, he'd lose it. 15 years of marriage, 1 year of planning this exact trip down to the last detail. And his wife had just humiliated him in front of 40 strangers like he was nothing. Like he was an inconvenience she was finally allowed to throw away. He walked past the security line, past the coffee kiosk, past the gate where another family was laughing, oblivious, boarding their own flight to somewhere happy. He didn't cry. That surprised him. He expected to feel his chest cave in, expected his throat to close up the way it did when his father died. Instead, he felt something colder, something quieter, something that felt almost like clarity. He found a seat in an empty corner of the terminal, dropped his backpack between his feet, and just breathed. Marcus was 43 years old. He owned a home renovation company he'd built from nothing, starting with 1 truck, 1 toolbox, and a promise to himself that he'd never half-finish a job, the way his own father had half-finished everything in his life, including being a father. Marcus finished what he started. He always had. He'd finished planning this trip too. Every hotel confirmation, every flight, the championship soccer match tickets he'd bought 8 months in advance, because he knew his son Ethan had been begging to see that team play live. The anniversary dinner reservation at the restaurant Danielle had mentioned once almost 2 years ago in passing that he'd remembered because that's what he did. He remembered things about the people he loved. He'd paid for every bit of it. Every flight, every night at that resort, every ticket, every reservation, every dollar. And she just told him to go home like he was the help. He pulled out his phone. His hands weren't shaking, which surprised him almost as much as the tears that weren't coming. He didn't call anyone. He didn't text anyone. He opened his banking app instead, not out of revenge, not yet, just out of habit, the same habit that made him double-check every invoice on every job site. Something in him needed to look at numbers. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't tell you to go home in front of strangers. That's when he saw it. A transaction he didn't recognize. Small. Almost forgettable. $12 and change. Some kind of subscription service he'd never heard of, dated 3 days ago. He almost closed the app. Almost told himself it was nothing. Instead, something made him scroll further back. Another one. And another. Small transfers, all under $200, spaced out just enough that they'd never trigger a fraud alert. Going back, he checked the dates twice because he didn't believe it the first time, going back 14 months. His stomach dropped before his brain even understood why. He sat in that plastic airport chair, watching families board flights to happy places, and started doing math he didn't want to do. Behind him, 30 feet away, Danielle stood at the gate with their 2 children, scrolling through her own phone, not looking back once. She didn't know what he'd just found. She didn't know the trip was already over. She had no idea that the man she'd just humiliated in front of 40 strangers was the same man who was about to unravel everything she thought she'd hidden so carefully. Marcus closed the banking app. He opened his contacts instead and scrolled to a name he hadn't called in months. His older sister, Angela. He needed to know if what he suspected was actually true, or if he was about to blow up his whole life over a coincidence. His thumb hovered over the call button. Behind him, he heard the gate agent's final boarding call for Flight 227. He pressed call. If you're already invested in what Marcus is about to uncover, drop a comment below telling me what you think Danielle is hiding. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe, because part 2 is where this story takes a turn nobody sees coming. Angela picked up on the second ring. Marcus? Aren't you supposed to be at the airport right now? I need to ask you something, Marcus said. His voice came out steadier than he expected. And I need you to be honest with me. There was a pause on the other end. A pause that told him more than words could have. What's going on? Angela asked, but her voice had changed. It had gone careful, guarded. The way people talk when they already know something bad is coming and they're trying to figure out how much of it they have to say out loud. Danielle just told me to go home. At the gate. In front of everyone. In front of the kids. Angela didn't say anything for 3 full seconds. Marcus. Just answer me, he said. Has she talked to you about a divorce? Silence. Angela. Yes, she finally said. And her voice cracked on the word. She asked me a few months ago about how divorce worked. What happens to the house? I didn't know what to do, Marcus. I didn't want to be the one to tell you. I thought maybe she was just scared, just thinking out loud. I swear I didn't think. How many months ago? I don't know. 4? 5. Marcus closed his eyes. 5 months. Long before this trip was even booked. Long before he'd spent $1 more trying to save something that, apparently, only he still believed was worth saving. Why didn't you tell me? His voice wasn't angry. It was worse than angry. It was hollow. Because I love you both, Angela said, crying now. Because I didn't know if it was serious. Because I kept hoping I was wrong. Marcus sat there in that plastic chair as families rolled suitcases past him. As flight announcements echoed overhead. As his entire marriage rearranged itself in his head like furniture, he suddenly realized had never been where he thought it was. I have to go, he said quietly. Marcus, wait. He hung up. If you've ever had that gut punch moment where you realize someone you trusted knew the truth and stayed silent, comment, I've been there below. This story only gets heavier from here, so make sure you're subscribed before we go further. He didn't drive home. Not yet. He sat in that airport lounge for almost 2 hours, ordering a coffee he never drank, staring at his banking app like it might rearrange itself into something less devastating if he looked at it long enough. Didn't. $58,000. That's what he eventually calculated, once he stopped shaking enough to actually add the numbers correctly. $58,000, siphoned out of accounts connected to his own renovation business over the course of 14 months. Small enough each time to avoid suspicion. Consistent enough to be deliberate. Someone had planned this. Carefully. Patiently. Like they had all the time in the world. He thought about the business first, the guys on his crew, the payroll, the equipment loans he was still paying off. $58,000 was not a number he could just absorb and move on from. It was a number that could break things. Then he thought about Danielle's face at the gate. Not angry. Not guilty. Just bored of him. He opened his messages and texted his oldest employee, Dale, who managed the office when Marcus was in the field. Asterisk, can you pull the last 18 months of transfer records from the business account? I need everything, even the small stuff. Asterisk. Dale texted back within a minute. Everything okay? Not yet, Marcus wrote. But it will be. He didn't go straight home. He drove to his sister's house instead. Because he needed to see the tablet. Danielle had upgraded phones about 8 months ago and left her old tablet behind. The one she used to use for grocery lists and recipe videos. The one that had sat in a drawer at Angela's house ever since because Danielle said she didn't need it anymore. Marcus had forgotten about it entirely until this exact moment. Angela let him in without saying much. Her eyes were red. She didn't try to explain herself again. She just walked to the hallway closet, pulled out the tablet, and handed it to him like she was handing over evidence in a trial she'd already lost. I should have told you, she whispered. Marcus didn't answer. He sat down at her kitchen table and turned the tablet on. It still had Wi-Fi saved. It still had old accounts synced. It still had, sitting quietly in a messaging app Marcus didn't even know Danielle used, a thread of messages between her and someone saved simply as L. He opened it before he could talk himself out of it. The messages weren't explicit. That almost made it worse, the careful, deliberate distance of them, like two people who already knew they were being watched and had learned to speak in code. He'll never realize how far ahead we already are. One message read, dated 7 months ago. Marcus read it twice, then a third time. He wasn't imagining the coldness in Danielle's voice these past few months. He wasn't imagining the late nights or the phone she'd started sleeping with under her pillow. He wasn't losing his mind, and he wasn't paranoid, and he wasn't the problem. He'd been right the entire time. He just refused to believe it. Angela sat across from him, watching his face carefully. Who is Elle? Marcus scrolled up, and up, and up, until he found a name attached to a phone number he recognized, because it belonged to someone who worked 2 departments over from Danielle's office. Someone named Lawrence Carter. Someone Marcus had shaken hands with at a company holiday party 18 months ago. Back when he still thought his marriage was simply going through a rough patch instead of being quietly dismantled behind his back. He set the tablet down on the table. She wasn't just cheating, Marcus said slowly, almost to himself. She was planning an exit. Angela didn't argue. She didn't need to. The messages, the divorce questions, the hidden account, the transfers, none of it was random. None of it was sudden. It had all been building for over a year, brick by brick. While Marcus was busy building an anniversary trip out of love for a marriage that had already been condemned. He stood up. His legs felt strange under him, like the floor had shifted slightly and he was still adjusting. "What are you going to do?" Angela asked. Marcus picked up his keys. "I'm going to cancel a trip," he said. "And then I'm going to figure out how to tell my kids that their mother already decided how this ends. She just forgot to tell me." That gut drop feeling when you realize the person you love has been planning your ending for months? Let me know in the comments if you saw this twist coming. And if this story has you hooked, smash that like button and subscribe, because what Marcus does next is the moment this whole story turns. Marcus sat in his truck in Angela's driveway for a long moment before he did anything else. He needed one clear breath before he made the calls that would end the trip for good. He started with the airline. "I need to cancel 3 tickets," he told the representative. "Flight 227, this afternoon's departure. I can help with that. Can I ask the reason for cancellation?" Marcus almost laughed. Change of plans. The refund wasn't full, he knew that going in. But it didn't matter. He wasn't trying to save money. He was trying to take back something that had been stolen from him the second Danielle opened her mouth at that gate. Next was the resort. "I need to cancel a reservation under Ellison. Confirmation number." He read it off a printed itinerary he'd made himself, the one he'd laminated because he wanted the kids to have something to hold on to during the trip, something tangible, something that said your father planned every second of this because he loves you. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir. I'll process the cancellation now." Then the soccer tickets, the ones Ethan had circled on a calendar for 8 months, counting down the days out loud at breakfast. Marcus's throat tightened when he made that call, but he made it anyway. Then the tour company. Then the anniversary dinner reservation, the one at the restaurant Danielle mentioned once, years ago, in a voice that used to sound like she meant it when she said she loved him. Every single one. Cancelled. Paid for and cancelled because none of it had ever really been about vacations or soccer matches or anniversary dinners. It had been about a marriage Marcus still believed in, a marriage that, it turned out, only existed in his own head for longer than he wanted to admit. His phone buzzed. Danielle. He let it ring out. It buzzed again. Then a third time. He watched her name flash on the screen and felt something strange settle over him. Not satisfaction, not yet, but a kind of stillness he hadn't felt all day. On the 4th call, he answered. "Marcus, where are you? We missed the flight because of you. The kids are asking questions. What is going on?" "The trip is over," he said calmly. "What do you mean it's over? We can catch a later flight. I already checked. I canceled it. All of it. The flights, the resort, the tickets, the dinner. It's done." There was a pause on the line. He could hear her breathing change. "You did what?" "Marcus, that's insane. Why would you?" "I know about Lawrence," he said. Silence. Total, complete silence. The kind that says more than any scream ever could. I know about the account, he continued, voice still level. I know about the transfers. I know you asked my sister about divorce 5 months ago. I know you've been planning this for over a year. Marcus, I can explain. The trip is over, he repeated. And this time his voice didn't waver at all. That's all I called to say. He hung up before she could respond. If you've ever had to be the calm one while your whole world was falling apart, you already know how hard that phone call was for Marcus. Drop a heart in the comments if you're rooting for him right now. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, now's the time. Because the next part of the story is where everything changes for the kids. He drove straight to the airport to get Ethan and Maya. He'd already arranged for a car service to bring them to Angela's house, so they wouldn't be stranded at the terminal wondering what had happened to their family in the span of a single afternoon. When he pulled into Angela's driveway and saw them climbing out of the car, Maya's eyes red and swollen, Ethan's jaw tight in that specific way that reminded Marcus painfully of himself. His chest nearly gave out. Maya ran to him first. She didn't ask questions. She just wrapped her arms around his waist and cried into his shirt. Ethan stood a few feet back, arms crossed, trying to look older than 12. Dad. His voice cracked on the single word. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Marcus knelt down so he was eye level with both of them. He'd promised himself, sitting in that airport chair hours earlier, that whatever happened next, he would not let his children carry the weight of what wasn't theirs to carry. I don't know everything that's going to happen yet, he said honestly. But I need you both to hear this clearly. Whatever happens between me and your mom, this has nothing to do with either of you. Nothing you did. Nothing you said. Nothing you could have done differently. Maya sniffled against his shoulder. Then why is everyone so sad? Because sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt other grown-ups, Marcus said. But you two didn't make any choices here. You just got caught in the middle of something that isn't fair to you. And I'm sorry for that. I'm so sorry you had to see any of it. Ethan's arms loosened slightly. Are you gonna be okay? Marcus almost broke right there. Almost let his 12-year-old son see him fall apart completely. But he didn't. He pulled both kids into his arms instead. I promise you both something right now, he said, his voice thick but steady. No matter what happens with me and your mom, you will always have a father who shows up. Every game, every school event, every single day. That is never going to change. That's the one thing in all of this that I control, and I'm not giving it up for anything. Maya nodded against his chest. Ethan didn't say anything, but he leaned in closer, and that was enough. That night, after the kids were finally asleep in Angela's guest room, Marcus sat alone on her back porch with a coffee that had long gone cold. Angela came out and sat beside him without saying a word for a while. You didn't yell at her, Angela finally said. On the phone. I heard some of it. What good would yelling do? Most people would have screamed, especially after everything you found today. Marcus stared out at the dark yard. I spent 15 years building things. A business. Family. A house we all lived in. You don't build something worth having by screaming when it falls apart. You just assess the damage, figure out what's salvageable, and start clearing what isn't. Angela studied him for a long moment. You're handling this better than I would. I'm not handling it, Marcus said quietly. I'm surviving it. There's a difference. His phone buzzed again. Danielle, for the 11th time that day. He looked at the screen, then set the phone face down on the porch railing. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. Tonight, he just wanted to sit in the quiet with the two people who still needed him. His sister, who'd been carrying guilt she didn't deserve to carry alone, and somewhere inside that house, his kids, sleeping peacefully for the first time all day because their father had promised them something he intended to keep. This is the part where the story stops being about revenge and starts being about what really matters. Don't miss it. Like this video if Marcus's promise to his kids hit you right in the chest. And subscribe now because the final part of the story is the ending you didn't expect. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way Marcus hadn't expected. No screaming matches. No dramatic confrontations. Danielle tried to call several more times that first week, and eventually sent a long text message that Marcus read once and never responded to. She wanted to explain. She wanted him to understand that things had gotten complicated, and that she never meant for it to go this far. Marcus didn't need her explanation. He'd already seen the messages. He'd already seen the transfers. 14 months of careful, deliberate planning didn't happen by accident, and he refused to let her rewrite the story into something softer than what it actually was. He hired a lawyer instead of hiring an argument. The divorce process moved slower than he wanted and faster than he feared. Danielle didn't fight him on custody the way he'd braced himself for. Maybe out of guilt, maybe because Lawrence Carter had already started rearranging his own life to make room for hers. Marcus didn't ask. He didn't care to know. What he cared about was the $58,000. His lawyer helped him document every transfer, every hidden account, every piece of evidence from that tablet. It wasn't about revenge, Marcus told himself. Even on the nights it felt exactly like revenge. It was about a business he'd built with his own hands, employees who depended on that business, and a truth that deserved to be on the record instead of buried under someone else's convenient version of events. He never once posted about it online. Never once badmouthed Danielle to their friends, their neighbors, their children. When people asked what happened, he gave the shortest true answer he could. We grew apart. It happens. That was all anyone needed to know. If you're the kind of person who believes silence can be more powerful than screaming, you're going to love where this story ends up. Comment "Quiet Strength" below if that's you. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're almost at the ending that makes this whole story worth it. 3 months in, Marcus expanded his renovation business. He'd been putting off hiring 2 additional crew members for over a year, telling himself the timing wasn't right, telling himself he needed to wait. He stopped waiting. He hired Dale's nephew as an apprentice and a woman named Priya who'd been doing cabinetry work on her own for years and deserved better opportunities than she'd been getting. The business grew. Word spread. People respected a man who did what he said he'd do, who finished what he started, who didn't cut corners even when cutting corners would have been easier. At home, a smaller house now, one he'd bought for himself and the kids close to their school, Marcus started coaching Ethan's soccer team on weekends. He hadn't coached anything since college, but Ethan had asked quietly, almost like he expected to be told no. Marcus said yes before Ethan even finished the question. Maya started smiling again around month 4. It wasn't sudden. It was small things first. Laughing at a joke during dinner, asking to have friends over, humming songs while she did homework at the kitchen table. Marcus noticed every single one of those moments, because he'd spent weeks terrified he might never see them again. One evening, Angela came over for dinner and watched Marcus flip pancakes for a breakfast for dinner night the kids had requested. "You survived without becoming bitter," she said quietly, once the kids had run off to watch something in the living room. "Do you know how rare that is?" Marcus shrugged, sliding a pancake onto a plate. "Bitter doesn't build anything. I learned that a long time ago, just never had to test it this hard before. You could have destroyed her, publicly, with everything you found." "I could have," Marcus agreed, "but my kids would have had to live in that wreckage with me. I decided I'd rather build something they could actually stand on." Angela smiled, and for the first time since that day at the airport, it didn't come with sadness behind it. 1 year later, Marcus sat on a set of metal bleachers at Ethan's soccer game, a container of ballpark nachos balanced on his knee, Maya sitting beside him wrapped in his old university sweatshirt because the evening had turned cool. No luxury resort, no championship match tickets, no 5-star anniversary dinner, just cold metal bleachers, cheap nachos, and the sound of kids yelling across a soccer field under stadium lights. It was, without question, one of the best nights Marcus had had in years. Ethan scored a goal in the second half. Nothing spectacular, just a clean shot that slipped past a distracted goalkeeper, and looked straight up into the bleachers to find his father's face already lit up, already on his feet, already cheering louder than anyone else in the stands. Maya laughed and pulled at Marcus's sleeve. "Dad, you're being embarrassing." "Good," Marcus said, still cheering. "That's my job now." When the game ended and they were walking back toward the truck, Maya slipped her hand into his the way she used to when she was much younger. "Dad," she said, looking up at him. "You're smiling again." Marcus glanced down at her. surprised by how much that small observation meant to him. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess I am." They walked the rest of the way to the truck in comfortable silence, Ethan recounting his goal in exhausting detail, Maya laughing at every exaggeration, the stadium lights fading behind them as they drove home to a house that was smaller than the one before but somehow felt more solid. Marcus thought about that airport moment sometimes, less often now than he used to, but it still crossed his mind. He thought about the version of himself who stood there and simply said, "Okay," and walked away without a single argument. People had told him afterward that he should have fought harder, said more, defended himself louder in that terminal. He disagreed. Some foundations aren't meant to hold forever, no matter how carefully you build them. But when they finally give out, you don't rebuild on the same broken ground, hoping it'll hold this time. You clear it. You check what's actually salvageable. And then you build something new, something stronger, something honest, something that can actually carry the weight of the people who depend on you. Marcus had spent his whole career building homes for other families. It took losing his own to learn how to build one that would actually last. If this story moved you even half as much as it moved me writing it, make sure you like this video and subscribe right now. This channel is built on stories exactly like Marcus's, and you don't want to miss the next one. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have handled that airport moment the same way he did? Or would you have fought back right there on the spot? I read every single comment, so let me know. Thank you for watching until the very end.